Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into leadership training, but maybe not in the way you usually think about it. It's got a different kind of starting point.
Yeah, it feels a bit counterintuitive, actually.
Right. And our material for this, it's not, a dry academic study. We're pulling insights directly from an interview with Gunther Williams. He's the founder of Positive Impact University. So our mission today is really to get to the heart of what makes his approach tick. What's different? We want to pull out those core ideas straight from him and understand, well, the passion behind it. Why is this the way he thinks leaders should be developed?
Okay. And where does he start? What's the problem he saw?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. He kicks off by talking about his own journey, his own frustrations with traditional leadership stuff. And you might relate to this.
I think a lot of people probably would.
Exactly. He'd done it all, right?
Oh.
Attended tons of trainings, read the books, listened to the podcasts. He had the frameworks, the techniques.
All the tools in the toolkit, supposedly.
Right. But then he found this nagging issue. When things got real, the day-to-day messy stuff of leading people, dealing with conflict, teams struggling, the skills he'd learned just didn't stick. They sort of vanished right when he needed them.
Yeah, that disconnect between knowing what to do and actually doing it under pressure.
Precisely. He talks about feeling, and this is his quote, completely out of control and frustrated. That feeling, that gap, made him start questioning the whole approach. He felt like something fundamental was just missing.
And that frustration actually led to a breakthrough, didn't it? What he called a big aha moment.
It did.
He came across a book, Leadership and Self-Deception.
That was it?
And he described this as a total game changer. It wasn't about needing more skills, was it? It shifted his whole perspective.
Yeah, completely.
He realized the root of his frustrations, and what he saw in others wasn't just skill gaps. It was about how he was seeing the situation, how he was seeing people, his internal viewpoint. The book calls it being in the box.
Right, the box.
And that was the missing piece he'd been looking for. Gunther's big insight, and this really comes through in the interview, is basically you can learn skills till you're blue in the face, communication, delegation, whatever. But if you haven't tackled your mindset, if you haven't done that internal work to see your own box, those skills just won't land right.
They won't feel authentic.
Exactly. They won't get the results because your foundation, the way you're actually perceiving everything, is still creating interference. It's like building on shaky ground.
And he clearly believed this deeply. I mean, the interview mentions he made that book, Leadership and Self-Deception, required reading for his whole company.
Wow. Yeah. That's a big step. Shows real conviction.
Totally. And that wasn't just, a book club thing. That was the spark. That decision led them to start building their own training program, designed specifically around this idea of addressing the mindset first, the box.
Okay, so he has this revelation, mindset first. How does that actually translate into a program at Positive Impact University? What does it look like for someone going through it? It sounds a bit abstract.
It does, but they've structured it. The interview outlines it as a 7-module process. And interestingly, it's not like they wrote one giant textbook.
Yeah.
No. Each module is actually based on a different book or a core principle related to this kind of, internal perspective work.
Yeah.
So they're pulling in established ideas, but weaving them into their own system.
Ah, okay. Curating wisdom makes sense. So what happens in the sessions? Is it lectures? Watching videos?
Well, this is where, according to Gunther, the real change happens, the method itself. Every session has a lot of self-reflection and group discussion. It's built to be really interactive, really personal.
Right. Not just passively receiving information.
Not at all. They don't just explain concepts. They push you to look inward.
Right.
They ask these specific, quite powerful questions to challenge your usual way of seeing things.
Like what? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, questions like, is my view of this situation the whole truth? Or turning it back on yourself, like, what have I actually done to help things go right?
Ooh, okay. Those immediately make you stop and think, don't they? Shifts you away from just blaming other people or circumstances.
Exactly. Makes you consider your own part, your own perception. It shifts you from being just an observer to an active player in how things are unfolding.
Right.
And the whole thing is described as this cycle of review, reflection, and action. You look at a situation, you reflect on your mindset, your role in it, and you think about different actions based on that new insight.
So it's a continuous loop. Learn, reflect, act, repeat.
Yeah. And doing that over and over, that's how you build awareness. The main goal of the whole 7 modules is to help people actually see their own box when it shows up, recognize when they're operating from that limited or defensive place, and then, crucially, build the muscle to step outside of it, intentionally.
Which brings us back to that core idea, why mindset first? Why does Positive Impact University insist on that order when so much training focuses purely on skills?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And the interview is really emphatic on this. It's the absolute foundation of their approach. The logic is essentially when you are out of the box, when you've cleared away those internal distortions, the skills you need suddenly become much easier to access. They flow more naturally.
So it's not that skills aren't important, but the mindset unlocks them.
Precisely. The idea he puts forward is pretty compelling. If you're operating from the right mindset, open, curious, acting with integrity, you are basically a great leader by default.
By default. That's a strong claim.
It is. It suggests that in that state, it's less about remembering technique XYZ and more about your fundamental intention and approach being right. Good interactions and influence just kind of happen.
So it's less about learning lines for a play and more about genuinely being the character.
That's a good way to put it. And again, the source stresses skills are important. You need to know how to do things. But their effectiveness, their real impact, comes when they are authentic.
Right.
And authenticity in this model comes directly from that out-of-the-box mindset. It flips the script, start inside, and the outside stuff gets supercharged.
Okay, flipping the script sounds great, but, does it actually work? The interview gives a specific story, an anecdote from Gunther, that really brings this to life.
Ah, yeah, the example with the leader struggling with her team.
That's the one. She was working with someone who felt her team just didn't respect her, which, is a horrible feeling for a leader.
Absolutely. Very isolating.
And she'd likely tried different things, different management techniques, but the core dynamic wasn't changing.
So she goes through the Positive Impact University process.
Right. Starts doing that self-reflection, the group discussions, looking inward for her box. What she discovered was fascinating. She realized she was operating from this deep internal belief. I can't do this job.
Wow. That's a heavy belief to carry into work every day.
Totally. And that belief, that internal narrative, that was her box. It colored every interaction, every challenge. The breakthrough came when she saw it for what it was, just a story. The quote was, she realized it was just a story, not a fact.
That distinction is huge, seeing it as a narrative, not objective reality.
Game-changing. And listen to the result described in the interview. The moment she saw that story, stepped out of that box, apparently everything changed.
Everything.
That's what he said. And he emphasized how fast it was. In 2 weeks, her team was working together again.
2 weeks. That's incredible.
Isn't it? And it wasn't from some new external tactic, but from that internal shift. It really highlights the leverage you get from tackling the mindset first.
That's a powerful example. And to help people make those kinds of shifts, they use practical tools, right? There was one mentioned specifically. Fact assumption.
Yes, tell us about that. How does it work?
Okay, so it's a tool designed to help you separate objective reality from your subjective interpretation, especially when things are tense, like with a struggling team member.
Right, where it's easy to jump to conclusions.
Exactly. It's so easy to think they're lazy, they don't care, they're not cut out for this. The tool forces you to pause that.
So step one.
Step one is stick to the measurable facts. What can you objectively point to? Performance numbers are down by X%. Deadlines Y and Z were missed. Quality metric A isn't being met. Maybe specific observable behaviors described factually.
Okay, just the data. No interpretation yet.
Correct. Step two is consciously identifying the moment you leap from those facts to an assumption. You see the facts, and your brain instantly wants to create a story to explain them, often a negative one.
Like, okay, fact, missed deadlines, assumption. They just don't want this job.
Precisely that jump. The tool makes you catch yourself right there and challenge that automatic assumption. Is that the only explanation?
And step three.
Step three is actively brainstorming other possible assumptions. What else could explain the facts? Maybe something's going on at home. Maybe they need more training or better tools. Maybe the role isn't challenging enough and they're bored. You force yourself to consider alternatives.
Ah, okay. It stops you from getting locked into that first negative story.
Exactly. Gunther emphasizes that this tool genuinely opens your mind. You go into the conversation not with a judgment already made, but with curiosity. Curiosity instead of judgment.
And that shift from judgment to curiosity, that seems to be the bridge to better interactions. The interview talks about how that curiosity, fueled by the mindset work, changes conversations.
Yeah, especially the tough ones.
And they mention vulnerability being key here, which feels a bit counterculture for traditional leadership.
It does. It's not about the leader having all the answers or delivering a verdict.
Right. It's about the leader being open enough to say, here's what I'm seeing, sharing the facts. Well,
Yeah.
can you help me understand your perspective? What's going on for you?
That invitation changes everything.
Yeah. And the stated goal, when you approach it this way, from that curious, out-of-the-box place, is explicitly working together to find solutions. It's fundamentally not assigning blame.
Think about how different that feels for both people. It's not an accusation, it's a joint problem-solving effort.
Right. And as Gunther points out in the source, when you show that genuine curiosity, when you're not coming in with a fixed judgment, people feel safer.
And safety allows them to open up, to share their real issues, their struggles, their ideas. That's where the actual solutions come from. It all ties back to doing the internal work first.
You can really hear the conviction when Gunther talks about this stuff, and it clearly comes from seeing it work in his own company using the Positive Impact University principles.
Absolutely. The interview touches on real, tangible effects he's seen there, like developing a common language for accountability.
How does that help?
Well, because everyone understands concepts like the box or facts versus assumptions, they can talk about tricky things. Performance, disagreements, using that shared framework without it immediately becoming personal or defensive.
Okay, so it gives them tools for difficult conversations.
Yeah. And another big one is that people actively choose to get curious instead of letting stories build into issues. So that fact assumption tool isn't just theory, people are actually using it. Before a small frustration snowballs based on negative assumptions, the default becomes pause, check facts, consider assumptions, get curious, talk about it.
That sounds much healthier.
Definitely. And he's realistic, too. He acknowledges, we're not perfect, no company is. But he says quite clearly that their problems are fewer and less severe now than before they embedded this approach. That's a pretty strong endorsement from his own experience.
Yeah, when you hear about that kind of impact, you understand why this isn't just another training program for him.
Yeah.
You feel that passion.
Yeah.
He really believes in this because he's seen it work.
It comes across very strongly.
And that passion, that belief, is clearly driving his vision for the future of Positive Impact University. What does he hope to achieve with it?
Well, the interview states his core vision pretty simply, but it's huge. To share these principles with as many people as possible.
So taking it beyond his own company walls.
Absolutely. He's already out there sharing on podcasts, posts, trying to reach leaders who are maybe looking for something different. And he's thinking bigger, too, about scale.
How so?
The source mentions plans for potentially using AI-powered tools down the line and building a membership community to make these ideas and tools more accessible.
Interesting. Using tech and community to spread the message.
Right, because the ultimate goal, the driving force, is crystal clear. To help leaders everywhere create positive, productive cultures. It's this vision of changing workplaces from the inside out, one leader's mindset at a time.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive today, based on that interview with Gunther Williams, the main takeaway is pretty powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, that effective, authentic leadership, it doesn't start with just learning more techniques.
Right. It starts with the internal work.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding your own mindset, seeing your box, learning to step outside it. Skills matter, definitely.
But their real power gets unlocked when they come from that foundation of clarity, curiosity, and self-awareness.
So, as you're listening, think about your own world, your work, maybe even your personal life. Have you ever felt stuck hitting the same wall again and again, even after trying different tactics?
Or maybe seeing conflicts just spiral based on what felt like misunderstanding.
Consider this, drawing from what we've explored today. How often might those frustrations, those challenges, stem less from the outside world or what other people are doing, and more from the perspective, the internal box you're bringing to the situation?
It's a challenging question.
It is, but asking it might just shift how you approach things from here on out.